already, you should soon be able to see my screen. This is Kim Walker with the National Alliance to End Homelessness, and what we'll be doing today, which is a review of the application for that coordinated assessment process. Before we get started, I just want to explain how this will work. Right now, we have everybody on mute except myself and my colleagues at the National Alliance to End Homelessness, Norm Suchar and Anna Blasco, who both contributed a great deal to this application. I'm going to take everyone off mute in a few minutes so that we can have a discussion and you all can ask questions. What I'm going to ask you to do first, though, is that if you are intending on asking questions at any point, that you switch your audio to being on the telephone and calling in with the number provided rather than using your computer speakers and microphone, just because it seems like people have a lot more audio issues if they don't call in. So the way to do that, if you do plan on talking today, is if you look at your webinar panel on the right, there should be a tab that says audio. And if you click on that, it should give you two choices between telephone or mic and speakers. So if you click the telephone button, you should be provided with a phone number and an access code, and that will allow you to actually call in via phone. So if at all possible, I'm just going to ask everybody to do that just so that it minimizes the amount of audio problems that we might have and to make sure that we can hear everybody clearly. So I'm just going to give everyone a minute to do that, and then I'm going to go ahead and unmute everybody. If you like to stay on mute, that's completely up to you, and you can mute your own personal phone line, but I'm going to go ahead and unmute you from my side of things. So just take a few seconds now and go ahead and make that switch if that's what you'd like to do. And while I'm giving everyone a chance to do that, I do want to remind everybody that we are recording the webinar today. So if you have colleagues or other people at your organization that you think may want to watch this or may have questions, we will record this and put it on our website and send out a link to you all so you can access it. So don't worry if someone wasn't able to make it today. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start unmuting people.
Muted.
And if you're also in an area with a lot of background noise, you can go ahead and mute yourself again. Okay, so if I've unmuted you already, can you just state your name for everyone on the call?
Stacy Lowry, Mecklenburg County.
This is Helen Whitman and Kim Provoznak, Mecklenburg County.
Great. Anyone else on?
This is Sandra Ryder with Innovative Community Resources.
Okay.
Medical's free catheter sample pack. There's the all-new compact catheter for women.
Anybody else?
Eyelid catheter. The discreet pocket.
Okay, so I think we've got a few more people just figuring out the audio side of things. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward. And can everyone see my screen okay as well and see the application? Is that a yes?
I can see it fine.
Thank you, Norm.
Yes, I can.
Okay, so I just wanted to kind of start with the basics here at the beginning. The application opens with kind of just a general statement of what we're doing with coordinated assessment. But kind of important at the bottom of this page is that we have a timeline. So just as a reminder, the applications are due February 21st, 2014, and they should be submitted the same way the letters of intent were. So you want to send those to Rebecca Pfeiffer, and I believe her email address is in here somewhere. And the final decisions are going to be announced by March 7th. So you'll hear from us by then if you were selected as a finalist or not. And just a reminder again, please switch to telephone if you haven't already. And if you haven't, if you could just mute yourself temporarily, I think that would cut down a little bit on the echo. But we will send out reminders, again, about those dates, but just so you know where they are. That timeline on the first page has the important due dates and the final decision date. Another important thing is that we ask for applicants for the location of coordinated assessment, so just providing the physical space. And we also ask for applicants to provide staffing for coordinated assessment. We also give people the option to apply for both of those. So if you're interested in doing all three, this is something that you would have stated in your letter of intent as well. You can do that. And as we go through the application, I'll kind of point out which parts are relevant to which people. That, again, is also in this application. But just so everyone understands how that works, some people may only be applying for location, while some may only be applying for staffing. So there may be some parts that are more or less relevant to your own organization. And if we move to the top of the second page here, we have the evaluation criteria. So it will tell you which sections you need to complete. So if you are just applying to be a physical location to host coordinated assessment, you'll want to fill out sections 1 and 2. If you're applying to staff coordinated assessment, just sections 1 and 3. And if you're applying for both, you want to fill out everything. So just so that's clear to everybody. The next piece is just submitting the application. You should be submitting it as a Word document. These decisions that are being made will be final, and we'll talk a little bit more about that decision-making process toward the end today. We added something in here about potential new money for the process. We're not yet clear on what resources will or will not be available. Obviously, as soon as we know more about that, we will let the applicants and the rest of the community know. But if we have reached a point where we've selected finalists and that information comes out and that somehow changes your ability to participate, we will certainly work with you on that. So that's just a note there to say we don't know everything right now about funding and all of that, but once we have that information, we will share it. And again, just the piece about submitting your application to Rebecca Pfeiffer at the COC, and there's her email address. We also included Norm's phone number if you have questions, but you can feel free to contact myself as well at kwalker@naeh.org, and I can send that information out with the webinar link afterwards. So please feel free to reach out to us if after this webinar additional questions come up for you. So I'm going to go through just the first section here, section 1, and then ask and see, and then we can stop there for questions. I think so far it's probably pretty self-explanatory, but I want to make sure I'm covering everything that you all have questions about. So we start out the application questions with just some very basic information, the name of your agency, the address, your primary staff contact. So this will be the person that we inform of our final decision when that time comes. So you want to make sure we have their phone number and their email address. Moving into section 1, you'll see that under each section we have a guideline for the number of words to use for the entire section. So for section 1, it's 300 words. So that means for all of the questions in section 1, if you add up all of those words, they should be 300. So it's 300 words per section, not per question. So that's important to take note of. And this starts with, again, some very basic information about your agency. So first you want to know who it is that you serve, so you can just check as many boxes as apply. If the organization, the individuals or the population that you serve is not listed anywhere here, feel free to check that other box and then fill in who that population consists of. And we also have another box at the very bottom of that question for any additional comments you might have about other populations your agency serves. So if there's any other information that you feel like we need to know about who you serve, feel free to include that there as well. And we did include this note about, regardless of who you serve, there is the expectation that you will assess anyone that comes to you seeking homeless assistance services, which means, of course, you're not committing to serving them, you're just committing to doing the assessment with them. And the exception there would be domestic violence agencies, of course, because of the safety concerns. If you have similar safety concerns, or if there's some legal reason you feel like you could not assess someone that you don't normally serve, please feel free to tell us about that. But I think generally we shouldn't have a big issue there. But that's, again, we're just hoping to make things as simple as possible for the people that we're serving. So the expectation is if they show up to any of our assessment centers, they can at least be assessed there, even if they're served elsewhere. Question 2 here asks if there are any federal or state or local regulations, laws, et cetera, that restrict who you can serve. So again, this is trying to get a sense of if there are people that you are not allowed to serve at your agency legally, who those people are. And the third question is asking you if you anticipate being able to provide any financial resources toward being an assessment center. This question is just strictly about financial resources. In the other sections later on, you can talk more about staffing resources. But this question is really focusing on any money that you foresee being able to contribute to this specific purpose. So I'm going to stop there for a second and just see if we have any questions so far. So go ahead and speak them if you have any. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Then I will just keep moving ahead. So moving to section 2, this is for the location section. So if you are not applying to be a location, you do not need to fill this out. The location section is no more than 600 words, again, for the entire section. So again, I think the questions we tried to make as straightforward as possible, but what we're really looking for here and our preference is agencies that people experiencing homelessness are already familiar with in some way. And so you'll see that reflected in these questions. For example, question 4, are you located at a site where people experiencing homelessness already go? So if you've already worked with homeless people, which I think pretty much everyone on this call has, we're trying to get a sense of that. And the second piece of that question, if you don't do that, but you're located near a site where a lot of people experiencing homelessness already go, we would like to know that as well. So again, just giving us some basic information on where you are and how that ties into the homeless assistance community. Number 5, we're looking for a central location, and by that we mean a place that's accessible. So we get into that in the next couple of questions. Just giving us an idea if your agency is accessible by public transportation. We specifically ask for bus routes, but if there are other types of public transportation that you're near, please feel free to put that information there. Again, we're really trying to get a sense of how easily people can get to you, no matter where you are. Number 6 and 7, we're really looking at adequate physical space first. So do you have enough space for people coming in to be assessed? You probably want and actually really need a separate space as well for people that would like to be assessed privately. So a separate room or something like that. That's especially important for survivors of domestic violence coming in. That's a requirement. So please here just kind of give us an idea of your agency's physical space, what's available, how many rooms you have, what people will kind of see coming in. Is it like a big open space? And then where the assessments would take place within that. 7 is really looking at if you are applying for both the location and the staffing, would you be willing to have employees of another agency provide staffing in your agency? So for those of you that are applying for both location and staffing, it's possible that you're only selected for one of those things. So if we only selected your agency to be a location for coordinated assessment, we need to know if it's okay for other staff from other agencies to come to your location. And again, that's just to get a sense of if this will work and which agencies it will work for. So again, just let us know what the answer to that would be. Number 8 is kind of a more open-ended question, which is why you want to be a coordinated assessment site for the community. Obviously, we think coordinated assessment is a great thing, and it can do a lot of great things for the communities that do it well. We just want to get a sense of for your agency why you think this is important. So just feel free to lay that out for us. And the last question in this section, number 9, if your agency has had any NIMBY issues in the past, so not in my backyard, problems with people walking up to your agency specifically, we know that has been an issue for a lot of homeless assistance programs. And I want to stress that if that's true, that's okay. We just want to get a sense, again, of what we're walking into and setting up the system a certain way. So please just share with us if you've had any issues in the past within the community that you know about where people have kind of been against people walking up to your agency. Just, again, help us kind of figure out which pieces to put where and how to set things up in a way that works for everyone. So that is section 2. Were there any questions about the location section? And Norm and Anna, is there anything that you guys, I'm sorry, did someone say something?
That was actually me, Norm. I just wanted to chime in because a couple of the phone lines are echoing a bit, so we've been muting people if their phone lines are echoing. So if you talk and nothing, being heard by anyone else, that's possibly the reason. So if you just want to use the chat box, let us know you have a question, and we'll make sure we get you unmuted. We're trying to unmute people for all the questions, but during the other times we're trying to keep them muted. So just wanted to let you all know that we were, trying to keep the echoing down to a minimum.
Thanks, Norm. And Norm and Anna, is there anything so far that you think needs to be highlighted or that I missed about the application itself?
Nope.
Okay. Well, we're on a roll, so I will go through the last piece then, and we'll see again if we have any more questions. The last piece is just the staffing section. Again, no more than 600 words for that entire section. And it's important to note here, since the county is submitting its own application, if you are an agency that currently has a staff person that is funded through the county or that comes from the county, you should not include them in the answers to the questions below. So since they will have their own separate application, you should only include staff in your answers here that are funded by your agency, just to clear up any confusion there. So the first few questions are just getting a sense of the staff you have now. And so question 10, we're asking you the staff member that will supervise the assessment staff, so their position, their qualifications, and expertise. And you can see for this section you only have 600 words. So if we need more information from you about this section, we'll ask you for it, but there's no need to submit resumes or anything like that. You want to keep to that word limit. So really just their name, their position, and a basic sense of their qualifications is good enough. The second question is any additional staff and staff time that could be devoted to assessing clients. So we want to get a sense of, again, what staffing resources you already have available, excluding, again, any county resources if you have those. So, again, you can include names there if you like, or just titles. Either is fine, but just giving us a sense of who's there and how much time they could spend on assessing clients is helpful. 12, talking about any experience your agency has had with conducting assessments and making referrals. So, of course, we don't expect people to have experience with coordinated assessment because it's just kind of starting out in Charlotte. But assessments includes any current tools that your program may be using. So a lot of agencies have their own intake forms, and you may be making referrals kind of in a more informal way. So just sharing that information with us about what your staff currently do, how much time they spend on those assessments, and how referrals are currently being made, as well as how much staff time is devoted to those things would be really helpful for us. 13, again, kind of gets to this separate purpose piece. So if you're just doing the staffing, are you willing to travel to other locations to do the assessments? And especially for those agencies that are applying for both but only get selected for staffing, again, are you willing to go to other places to perform those assessments? It's important for us to know. If there are limitations on that for some reason, obviously that could be that could prove a little difficult. So we just need to know that up front. And the same question that we had in the location section, I believe, why does your agency and staff want to do coordinated assessment? Kind of, again, open-ended, just trying to get a sense of what your interest is in participating. 15, pretty basic. If your agency has resources to assess households who speak languages other than English, that's great. If you don't, we'd just like to know how you plan to handle that issue if you run into it, if there's someone that needs to be assessed that has another primary language. So that is actually the application in its entirety. There's one more piece here at the bottom, which is the general expectations piece. And I want to say this is kind of just, again, very general. Our expectation is that once we've selected finalists, they will sign a memorandum of understanding that's a bit more specific about what they'll be expected to do. But we did want to have this available so that the agencies that are applying understand what's expected of them, since this is a new process for Charlotte. So just, again, kind of the basics here. If in applying for this, assuming that you do become a finalist, we would expect that you would be okay with having your assessment staff evaluated on a regular basis by the COC and by any other outside evaluators that they might bring in to complete that task. You're agreeing to receiving training on conducting the assessments, doing the referrals, and data entry associated with coordinated assessment. This one is fairly obvious, but treating all people experiencing homelessness with respect and kindness. Specifically for those who are serving as locations, agreeing to providing a walkthrough of their facilities to evaluators or COC board or committee members, just again to give them a sense of how things will work when people come in seeking assessments. This is a big one. Exclusively accept referrals to your own organization that come to them as a result of the coordinated assessment process. And so obviously the process itself is something we're still finalizing, but we would definitely expect that any agency that leads this process, whether through providing staff or providing a location, is committed to only accepting referrals that come to them through that process. That also means that if someone walks up to you to be assessed, that you assess them and don't just accept them into your program first. And so we really need that commitment from pretty much every organization in Charlotte, but especially those that are going to be leading the process, that you are on board with the process itself and that you are holding yourself accountable to the same rules that we would expect any other agency participating to hold themselves accountable to. The next one is also big, participating in CHIN and entering coordinated assessment information into CHIN. So we've started those conversations with CHIN about, putting assessment tools into CHIN and how that would look. But that's another thing that's kind of still evolving. But basically it means that you'll need to be connected to CHIN. You'll need to have your staff trained on entering the information into CHIN so it can be shared throughout the system. The exception to that, again, would be for the domestic violence survivors, so that's legally prohibited. And again, you would receive training on, when those cases exist. Follow the policies and procedures once they're created. Again, those are in process, but we would expect you to abide by the rules of the entire coordinated assessment process. The next one I think is equally important, which is that as a location or as an organization providing staffing, that you communicate with the COC and the COC board about how things are going. I think coordinated assessment is really an intervention that to work successfully needs to kind of evolve over time. And sometimes things don't work the way we expect them to at first, and so it's really important that if there are issues that you're having in trying to perform these duties, that you are communicating them to the COC so they can be addressed as soon as possible. So we would ask that anyone participating be prepared to share those concerns on a regular basis and to keep that communication loop open so that we can make sure that we're addressing any issues as they come up. And then finally, making referrals, that you would do so based upon system-wide prioritization criteria. So once we get to that phase of the process, we'll have developed kind of a tool that gives you information on when referrals should be made and who should be prioritized for different services. We would expect you to respect those rules as well. So we ask that you sign a date when you turn in your application, that you understand those general expectations. You'll see there's a space below. If you feel like you are unable to meet one or more of those criteria, you can describe that to us. And then, of course, if we need to follow up with you about that, we will. So that is the application in a nutshell. We tried to make it as straightforward as possible. A little bit about what happens after you submit. Once we get the applications in, the call committee, which has been kind of a temporary committee, kind of taking us through some of this process, will be reviewing the applications with a scoring sheet that we will be providing them. They will then forward their recommendations or their thoughts to the COC for final approval. And then once we've gotten that, we will send out that final notification to everybody by that March 7th date. So you still have plenty of time to work on these. And again, if there are additional questions that you have, you can feel free to contact any of us at the Alliance or Rebecca, whose contact information is on the application. So that's all I had to say. Norma or Anna, did you want to add anything before I open it up for a final round of questions?
No, not me.
Okay, well then, if anyone has any additional questions, speak now or temporarily hold your peace. Okay. Well, thanks everyone for listening in today. Again, if you have a colleague that wants to see this, we'll send out a link to the recorded version, and keep in touch if you have any questions. And thanks to all of you for applying as well. Obviously, this doesn't work unless we have people interested in doing the daily work. So thanks for getting to step one.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.